Get to that in a few minutes, but we have to discuss, obviously, the big story of the day, which is everybody is mad at President Trump because President Trump, it turns out, is President Trump and says things. And as I've said many times, on his epitaph, it will say, Donald Trump, 45th President of the United States. He said a lot of bleep, right? That would be the nice version of the epitaph. You know, again, I like a lot of the stuff he's done as president. I think that he's handled the coronavirus situation in terms of policy actually really, really well. It's just that it ain't great when you're rambling on about sunlight and eating it. We'll get to that in just 1 second. It's also not quite fair. He didn't quite say that. We'll get to that in just 1 second. First, let's talk about the fact that right now it is uplifting as an American to see how so many fantastic companies are doing everything they can to help get us through this trying time. I mean, really, people are really working to try and keep their employees employed and to find new employees and to do charity work so that people who are out of work actually have not only a source of income, but sometimes food on the table. Work together. Go check them out right now. Okay, so now to the topic of the day, and that is science. So this all sort of turned bad yesterday at the White House after the head of the DHS, or a spokesperson for the DHS named Phil Bryan, got up and he explained some good news. Right, the good news, he said, is that sunlight and heat may in fact kill the virus. So we had heard a study earlier this week from France in which somebody in a lab turned up the heat really high on the virus, and the virus didn't die. But now, apparently, William Bryan, the Undersecretary for Science over at the DHS, he says, well, actually, we have some good information that sunlight and heat may help kill the virus. Now, by the way, this does show how stupid it was to lock down parks, right? How stupid it was to tell people to shelter in their homes as opposed to being out in public, not near other people, right? It is a good thing to be at parks, on beaches. It is a good thing to be away from other people, but in the sunlight. You are not coughing on other people. You're not sneezing on other people. When you're out in the open air, there's a place for the germs to go as you breathe. Right? There are lots of reasons to be outside. Well, among those reasons are that sunlight and heat may help kill the virus. Sunlight literally being the best disinfectant in this particular case. Here is the DHS's William Bryan.
Our most striking observation to date is the powerful effect that solar light appears to have on killing the virus, both surfaces and in the air. We've seen a similar effect with both temperature and humidity as well, where increasing the temperature and humidity, or both, is generally less favorable to the virus. As the temperature increases and as the humidity increases, with no sun involved, you can see how drastically the half-life goes down on that virus. So the virus is dying at a much more rapid pace just from exposure to higher temperatures and just from exposure to humidity.
So they're saying that 70 to 75 degrees with 20% humidity during the summer with sunlight, right? With summer sunlight, that means that aerosolized saliva droplets, right? You breathe, you talk, you sneeze in the air. The half-life on that is going to be about 1.5 minutes, which is a lot better than people have been suggesting, that this stuff was going to sit around in the air for 3 hours, 4 hours, that basically could be walking around and just walk right into a cloud of the virus without even knowing about it. So that's really good news. And it does suggest, by the way, that when we do reopen businesses, people should be trying to do business outdoors as much as humanly possible, right? Maybe we can have barbershops that are actually doing haircuts outdoors. Or maybe we can, if you're going to go to a restaurant, instead of just seating people inside the restaurant, if you got a parking lot, put some tables out there in the parking lot and socially distance the tables, and you're a lot better off than you are inside the restaurant. Right? There are things that this allows business to do. I mean, this is good information, and it's possible that if we just tamp this thing down for a few months, that gives the medical profession a chance to come up with new solutions by the time we come back. Okay, so all of that's good, right? I mean, that's good information, and that is the real headline. That should be the headline. I mean, that should, I'm looking for encouraging news. Are you looking for encouraging news? I would like to not die. I would like my parents to not die. I would like all Americans to not die. So that is the real news. Well, then President Trump gets up. And President Trump, who sort of speaks from a half-remembered dream when it comes to the science very often, right? He takes in information, and then it bounces around in there, and then just comes right back out, but in a very garbled form. He starts kind of riffing about that time that the Germans bombed Pearl Harbor. He starts riffing about injecting disinfectant and how we can get UV light inside people. Now, in a second, I'm going to explain what he actually meant, because what he actually meant, I think, is not actually crazy. It's actually fairly well established. But the way he says it, it isn't, like, if you don't know what he means, there's no way not to read this as he's telling you that you should actually take Clorox and just go right into the or that you should take a ball of sunlight and just down it. Right? Or that you should take a light bulb and shine it up your nose or something. Like, it's a very bizarre statement that he makes here. And the media, of course, jump all over this. Now, as I say, is this an important story? No, it's not an important story. Is it good for Trump? No, it's not good for Trump because, again, credibility and trustworthiness and level head. These are things that people value, particularly in an emergency time, in an election year. Now, let's be real about this. Joe Biden is not sentient. So Joe Biden could have said exactly the same thing and the media would have just ignored it and then made excuses for it. For Trump, they won't do the same thing. And that's just a reality of the situation, which is why Trump, just as a matter of self-preservation politically, should be a lot more careful about the stuff that falls out of his face. But here's President Trump making the comments that set 1,000 ships ablaze.
Supposing you brought the light inside the body, which you can do either through the skin or in some other way. And I think you said you're going to test that too. Sounds interesting.
We'll get the right folks who could.
Right, and then I see the disinfectant where it knocks it out in a minute, 1 minute. And is there a way we can do something like that by injection inside or almost a cleaning? Because you see it gets on the lungs and it does a tremendous number in the lungs. So it'd be interesting to check that. So that you're going to have to use medical doctors with. But it sounds interesting to me.
Well, okay. Right? In a second, we'll get to him clarifying this because, again, what he heard was probably, he does this all the time. He hears a piece of information. The piece of information is right when he hears it. He processes it. It comes out wrong on the other end, right? He did this with hydroxychloroquine. Like people were saying, hydroxychloroquine may be a possible treatment for this thing. And then he went out and he oversold it because that's what Trump does. He's a real estate guy. So he oversells things. And so he sort of comes up with the bumper sticker version of what he thinks he heard. And then he says it. I'll give you what he actually meant in a second. And you'll see he sort of tries to clarify it, even in the middle of this press conference, and the media lose their minds over all of this. I will say that the reaction shot of Dr. Birx in this is pretty stellar. I mean, it's directly, right? Deborah Birx, the cutaway shot to her from the other angle while Trump is riffing about whether we can inject disinfectant and whether we can put sunlight inside the body in some way is pretty stellar. Like Dr. Birx, who's been on our Sunday special, and she's got a rough job. I mean, if you are in the Trump administration, you have to balance, let's get good things done, and also let's not piss off Trump, right? That really is the balance. I know a lot of people in the administration. Anybody who tells you that's not the balance is lying to you. That, of course, is the balance, okay? President Trump is not the world's thickest skinned dude, and he doesn't like being publicly criticized. And so it puts these scientists in sort of a weird position because, I mean, you'll actually see it. One of these scientists is called back up and asked about whether this is smart or not. And the guy's like, well, we're not actually testing it. And then Trump is like, well, the medical people might be testing it. Maybe. And like the guy's not going to answer a straight question as to whether we are going to test if you can actually just swallow a UV light bulb or something. Like it's absolutely. So what exactly is Trump actually talking about? Well, Jim Garrity has a good piece over at National Review. He says that Columbia University Center for Radiological Research developed lighting that uses far UVC that can kill viruses and bacteria without harming human skin, eyes, and other tissues, as is the problem with conventional ultraviolet light. You could put that lighting in public places and you could mitigate airborne viruses that way, but it's not going to get in your lungs or the rest of your body. It's not going to be put under the skin or anything like that. And when the president is talking about how sunlight, maybe that could be ingested, well, again, that is a botched and odd read of when you go out in sunlight, you have higher vitamin D production in your body. Vitamin D production in your body is helpful to your immune system, right? It helps prevent infection or reduce the risk of infection. But the media are obviously jumping on this to suggest that President Trump is a dunderhead. This is their real agenda here, right? They're very concerned with President Trump being a dunderhead. You'll even hear Trump correct his own comments in the middle of this because Trump understands he doesn't really know what he's talking about here. Like Trump has never admitted he doesn't know what he's talking about ever, right? He knows the most about everything. From the Afghan lemur to the swallows, the airspeed of a flying British swallow. Like he knows. If you ask Trump what he knows about a thing, everything. I know everything there is to know about it. There are experts who say I know more. Okay, he's never going to admit that. But right here, for example, he basically tries to correct himself because he understands. Like I'm just saying things that I've sort of heard, and like he walks it back. I mean, he really does.
You're talking about almost a cleaning sterilization of an area. Right. Maybe it works, maybe it doesn't work, but it certainly has a big effect if it's on a stationary object. On surfaces, the heat, the hot summer, and whatever other conditions, humidity and lack of humidity, that would have an impact. So that on surfaces where it can be picked up, it will die fairly quickly in the summer, whereas in the winter it wouldn't die so quickly.
Yes.
Okay, so again, what he's saying there, if you use it on an area, that is what we mean by using disinfectant, right? Or if you spray it in particular areas of the air, maybe that helps, right? Like what he's saying there makes sense. So he corrects himself. The media, of course, run with the first headline because it's a lot more colorful. Then you had a reporter asking Trump, if it's irresponsible for Trump to suggest that people go outside. No, that's not irresponsible. That's actually what his own scientists are saying. So this is where you can see that the media are off the rails. They're not trying to accurately interpret Trump. They're trying to drive a narrative that suggests that Trump is telling people to do unsafe things. Now, we already know that, right? We already know that they tried to blame him for a lady feeding her husband fish tank cleaner. And now they're trying to blame Trump for suggesting that it's good to go outside. Okay, I'm going to say it's flat out. It is better to be outside than inside. I've been saying this for weeks. All available studies show it is better to be outside than inside if you have a choice. Why? Because you are not in close contact with other human beings and breathing all over them in recirculated air. This is perfectly obvious. This has been true for a long time. Okay, I'm not going to make any bones about that. So here was a reporter asking Trump, do you think it's irresponsible for you to make people safe, to feel that they will be safe from the virus in the heat? That's not what he's saying. He's saying you're going to be safer from the virus in the heat outside than you will be in your home in air conditioning in a small area, which is, of course, true. And here is Trump basically pointing this out.
Is it dangerous for you to make people think they would be safe by going outside in the heat, considering that so many people are dying in Florida, considering that this virus has had an outbreak in Singapore, places that are hot and are humid?
Here we go. The new headline is Trump asks people to go outside. That's dangerous. Here we go. Same old group. You ready? I hope people enjoy the sun. And if it has an impact, that's great. Again, I say maybe you can, maybe you can't. I'm not a doctor. But I'm like a person that has a good you-know-what.
He's a person who has a good you-know-what. But what he said, I'll say it, okay, because the doctors are saying it, that being outside, there was a study from China. It found that a grand total of count them two, coronavirus cases were diagnosed from people who were actually outside talking with each other. And they were in close contact outside. If you are far away from other people outside, it is better to do that than it is to be inside, locked in with other people. Bottom line truth. This is true about any coronavirus, by the way. It's true about the flu. It's true about colds. It's true about any of these things. If you are far away from other people and in sunlight, that is better than being inside in recirculated air. This is why subway systems are really bad for this sort of thing. To pretend that it's dangerous for Trump to say this is fully idiotic, and you can see the narrative forming in real time. Now, the broader narrative is not just that Trump is incompetent and terrible and really bad person and all this. The broader narrative is that Republicans are anti-science. And there's two broader narratives that members of the Democratic Party and the media, but I repeat myself, are trying to push. One is Republicans hate science, and the other is that Republicans hate human life. And both of those are absolute, utter bullcrap. Republicans don't hate science, and they don't hate human life. In fact, many of us are trying to look hard at the science and figure out what the risks and rewards are. What Democrats are trying to do now is create this binary where if you are in favor of removal of lockdown in gradual and responsible fashion, this makes you an anti-vaccine activist, or this makes you somebody who is in favor of people just infecting each other willy-nilly. Of course, this plays into pre-existing stereotypes that the media have been trying to create for a long time, which is that if you are on the right, then this is because you are a climate change denier, and because you're evil and you deny science, and you don't care about old people dying, and you don't care about poor people dying, right? This is all their pre-existing narratives. They're now just trying to shoehorn coronavirus into it, and it doesn't fit. I mean, this is the stepsister trying to put on Cinderella's shoe. It just doesn't fit. So now they're cutting off toes trying to fit that foot into that shoe. We'll get to that in just 1 second.